The inhabitation of virtual spaces with avatars, found in Chapter 2 of Communities of Play. That chapter's titled Play Ecosystems. Here I'll provide a summary of the contents of the chapter and a short reflection on the material. Well, the avatar is the primary mode players use to inhabit virtual spaces. The original meaning of the word avatar has to do with the embodiment of a deity in an earthly form. It was actually quite common in the ancient world for rulers, like pharaohs or emperors, kings and queens, etc., to market themselves to their people as the earthly incarnation of some god or goddess. In Christian theology, it might even be possible to think of Christ's relationship to Israel's God as God's avatar. And this ancient understanding is actually quite an appropriate parallel for understanding how avatars function in a virtual space. The player is, in a sense, like a deity outside the game, unbound by the rules of the game, and the avatar is his or her digitally embodied representation within the game, bound by its rules. Now, what can an avatar look like? Well, there's a wide range of possibilities for this, and a player's choice of such depends heavily on the type of game being played. Some games allow players to choose their avatar from a host of pre-designed options like World of Warcraft, Counter-Strike Global, even a game like Mario Kart, while other games allow players to design their own, like Minecraft or the Mii's from the Wii console. And each of these has a range of options for customizing a look. An avatar then could look almost like anything from an animal to a fantasy creature to a close digital likeness of the player. Now, one concern about avatars has arisen recently, namely that some pre-designed female avatars really objectify women. In some games, especially fantasy games, women avatars are designed with provocative and sexualized attire. And this, unfortunately, has the potential to promote a view of women as objects. A recent study, even from Stanford, showed that playing with sexualized avatars in a virtual world impacts how women feel about themselves in the real world. So because of this, game designers ought to rethink how women are represented virtually. Finally, the existence of avatars brings up an interesting philosophical question, namely, what distinguishes the player from his or her own body? If my body is under the control of my mind, my physical one that is for the most part almost always responds to the decisions of my will. And the same is true of my avatar in a virtual world. It is also subject to my will, making no decisions of its own. So is it possible for me to inhabit multiple bodies, my physical one and my virtual one, or my virtual ones? Both my physical and my virtual body are limited by the rules of the game or the laws of physics, but within those parameters I exert my will over the body. So I'm in control of both. And beyond this, in virtual spaces and real spaces, I can make meaningful social connections. In fact, the social connections and bonds I form in the real world are no more or no less significant than the ones I may make in a virtual space. Thus, having multiple bodies or multiple identities may become an increasingly common notion if human beings continue to play in virtual spaces. So, avatars. These are the primary mode in which players inhabit virtual spaces, but their existence brings up both interesting philosophical questions and very important ethical questions.